Good afternoon, everybody. Now, I'm quite surprised to be invited as of today because I wasn't quite expecting it, but it's quite a miracle that I was invited today. It was good since I last spoke at the 5th of September Edinburgh protest, which was a great event, a good turnout and a good atmosphere. But it's a great shambles at the same time that Paddy Hogg and some other members I heard got arrested and are charged for hosting that event along with the 10th of September protest. So we can only hope and pray that their charges get dropped. Well, we can only just do that. Now, before I got invited to this event, my mum in particular was quite unsure about us even going to this event because of the 6-person rule. And so much so I was actually wanting to record my speech through the microphone in my house because I have a good one there. And I was hoping to send it to the group itself so they can play it over the loudspeakers. I mean, that was how much we were wanting to not avoid probably getting arrested or charged by the police for violating these kinds of rules, and well, look at my future career opportunities if I ever do get charged for a criminal record as a result. Now, before I get to the theme of what I'm going to speak about today, well, it has been said in the past that Scotland and France do have historical connections with regards to the battles they had with the English army, with Bannockburn just not far up the road towards Stirling. But out of all the French philosophers that the mainstream pro-independence movement seem to mention, they don't seem to mention this particular one guy whose famous book, The Law, is going to be the theme for this talk as of today. And this man is called Frederick Bastiat. Now, in his book, he explains the way the law works. Well, first of all, it's because God, whether it be like the Christian God or Allah or Buddha or Zeus, because some people keep telling us to mention that in the comment section of Amazon, or even just any other God for that matter, or even some leaders of the past like Cyrus the Great of the First Persian Empire. They give us 3 kinds of rights that we have to defend, which is life, liberty and property. And the law, if enforced in that way, is designed to help us defend such rights. But over 2 millennia, the way the law has actually been enforced has been taken over for and to be used for what's known, as Frederick Bastiat describes, as plunder. And in turn, what happens is any person can use the law using plunder, or what's known as legal plunder, for their own self-gain. But as history has shown, and therefore what would happen is that big governments, including dictators, use their own will with the law in order to justify this sort of plunder against their own citizens. But history has shown in itself, liberty can win in the end. I mean, look what happened between 404 and 403 BC when the 30 tyrants of ancient Greece tried and basically failed to rule over their own citizens using the various tyrannical rules and executing over 1,500 people as a result. They even executed one statesman by the name of Tyranny, try to pronounce the name there. And because although he was originally for this, what Aristotle literally described as an oligarchy, he then started to turn against it when he saw the terror that came with it. And so with that said about how plunder seems to be justified, there can be ways that can be done. And most of the time governments seem to insist that the only way they can do these things is mainly to say that it's for the general good of society. And this is where I have to bring up the first quote from page 20 of his book that I'm going to have to read if the wind's not going to get too annoying here. And so every time we object to a thing being done by government, it concludes that we object to its being done at all. We disapprove of education by the state, then we are against education altogether. We object to a state religion, then we would have no religion at all. We object to inequality which is brought about by the state, then we are against equality, and so on and so forth. They might as well accuse us of wishing men not to eat, because we object to the cultivation of corn by the state. Now, this kind of familiarity seems to apply today, not just with regards to health, as with being against the lockdown and having access to other kinds of drugs like hydroxychloroquine. But even if you were to try and bring up something a bit more neutral, like maybe NHS should be less bureaucratic in structure, the standard response from those who are in favour of it would be, well, you're only saying this because you just want hospital standards to go down and you want more people to get ill and die because of bad health choices they make. Now, one other thing I definitely feel, in my opinion, has been left out from this quote, is when anybody tries to object to the current wars and misadventures in the Middle East, which our governments are engaged in, and you say how much these wars are actually affecting the people of those countries in a very, very bad way. So much so they would even want to push the solution of, well, if only we just get the US and NATO troops out of these places, then therefore the people are going to prosper in those places and democracy will flourish again. Well, the standard response you would get is, well, you just want democracy and the people to be destroyed in those places. You're putting our interests and our troops at risk. And also, you're just playing into the hands of those beard-bagged dictators who just want to put us in the West in the way, or the West and the rest of the way of being destroyed. Now, Bastiat, ahead of his time, also commented that the most prosperous and peaceful countries in the world tend to be the ones where government interferes in private activity the least. Now, with that said, in trying to converse with people in the modern times, it can be a bit frustrating trying to talk about it, because most people will say, well, what's the point in even talking about it when we can go out the house to get some fresh air anytime we want, we can meet up with whoever we want to meet up with anytime we want, both outdoors and indoors. We can meet the love of our life, who we then get married to and live for the rest of our lives and have children. We can then own a car or a bicycle, and you could use it on the road or the cycle lane with a bit of risk involved. And we can also pay anytime to travel anytime we want to, even if it means having extra security in place to make sure that no person tries to block or hijack the boat or plane we're on. That's what frustrating is, and it kind of applies even to when you try to talk about how these current ideas about we need to get rid of hate speech tend to impact on freedom of speech here. The standard response will be, well, I'm not getting arrested for it because someone overheard me making a near-knuckle joke in a pub the last few nights. But wait until that actually happens, and only then will they finally care about the freedom of speech being taken away and wanting to campaign for it. Now, I fully understand as well that I want to try and cut the speech short to between 10 minutes. Now, the first quote I'm about to do kind of sums up what Gary, the previous speaker, talked about with regards to being able to have bodily autonomy. And this is what Frederick Bastiat had to say on page 40 of the book. I am acting with regard to it in the spirit which animated a celebrated traveller. He found himself in the midst of a savage tribe. A child had just been born, and a crowd of soothsayers, magicians and quacks were around it with rings, hooks and bandages. One said, "This child will never smell the perfume of a calumet unless I stretch his nostrils." Another said, "He will be without his sense of hearing unless I stretch his ears down to his shoulders." A third said, "He will never see the sun unless I give his eyes in a oblique direction." A fourth said, "He will never be upright unless I press his legs." And finally, a fifth said, "He will never be able to think unless I press his brain." "Stop," said the traveller. "Whatever God does is well done. Do not pretend to know more than he. And he has given organs to this frail creature. Allow those organs to develop themselves, to strengthen themselves by exercise, use, experience and liberty." Now this brings us on to the final quote, which Bastiat had to say 6 pages back, and I'm going to cut it short. And it kind of does sum up, to be fair, how the politicians seem to be reacting as of lately with regards to the lockdown. "If the natural tendencies of mankind are so bad that it is not safe to permit people to be free, how is it that the tendencies of those organisers are always good? Do not the legislators and their appointed agents also belong to the human race? Or do they believe that they themselves are made of a finer clay than the rest of mankind?" Well, I guess that sums it up for today's speech. I've got this book right here if you want to check out. After all, it does cost £5 on Amazon, which is kind of like a cheap price to get. If you want to check me out any further, please do not hesitate to follow me on Twitter at JonathanR1994. The same tag kind of applies on Parler as well as on Steemit, BitChute, Brighteon, as well as Joshua TV. I'm also a member of a political party called the Scottish Libertarian Party. If you want to come on over and chat with me afterwards to find out more about it, I've got some leaflets to hand out as well. So thanks very much everybody. I'll hand it over to the next speaker. Thanks very much.